Before you watch this heartbreaking true story, hit that like button and subscribe to witness one of the most devastating moments in entertainment history. This is a story about a father's grief, a performer's dedication, and the unimaginable choice that one man had to make on stage. This story will change how you think about sacrifice and love. Don't miss it. Dean Martin was on stage at the Sands Hotel in Las Vegas. The year was 1987. Dean was one of the biggest stars in the world. He was 60 years old, still performing, still making people laugh and sing along with him every night. The audience was packed. They were there to see Dean Martin. They were there to see a legend. They were there to have a night they would never forget. But they didn't know that this would be a night they would never forget for a completely different reason. Midway through his performance, someone handed Dean a note. A stage manager slipped it to him quietly, trying not to disrupt the show. 1. Dean read the note, and his entire world collapsed. His son had been in a military plane accident. His son was dead. For a moment, Dean stood on that stage in complete shock. The audience had no idea what was happening. They were still smiling, still waiting for the next joke, still expecting to be entertained. But Dean was experiencing the worst moment of his life. What happened in the next few minutes would break the hearts of everyone who witnessed it. It would show the world what a father's grief really looks like. It would demonstrate the kind of strength it takes to keep going when everything inside you is shattered. And it would become one of the most remembered moments in entertainment history, for all the wrong reasons. Why this works ***, you're immediately hooked by the impossible choice. A man on stage just learned his son is dead. What does he do? How does he keep going? Who is Dean Martin really? Most people knew Dean Martin as an entertainer, a singer, a comedian, a member of the Rat Pack, a man who could make thousands of people laugh in a single night. But Dean Martin was also a father. Dean had been married 3 times in his life. He had 8 children. And while his career was always important to him, his children were what gave his life meaning. Dean was a complicated father. Like many men of his generation, he didn't always know how to show his emotions. He didn't always know how to talk about his feelings. But he loved his children deeply. Dean Jr. One of Dean's sons was also named Dean. Dean Paul Martin Jr., everyone called him Dino. Dino was born in 1942. He was the son of Dean and his first wife, Betty McDonald. Dino inherited his father's talent. He could sing. He could act. He wanted to follow in his father's footsteps and become an entertainer. But Dino was also his own person. He didn't just want to live in his father's shadow. He wanted to make his own way in the world. He wanted to create his own identity. So Dino became a singer-songwriter. He recorded albums. He performed on television. He acted in movies. He was successful in his own right, not just because he was Dean Martin's son, but because he was talented. Dino was also different from his father in one important way. Dino was open about his emotions. Dino expressed his feelings. Dino was the kind of person who hugged people and told them he loved them. In many ways, Dino was more emotionally available than his father. But Dino loved his father deeply, and Dean loved his son. The military service. In the 1980s, Dino made a decision that surprised many people. He joined the U.S. Air Force. Dino was an entertainer. He was a singer. He was a sensitive, artistic soul. The military seemed like an unlikely path for someone like him. But Dino had reasons for joining. He wanted to serve his country. He wanted to prove something to himself. He wanted to be more than just an entertainer. He wanted to be a soldier. Dean was supportive of his son's decision, even though he didn't fully understand it. Dean was proud that his son wanted to serve. But Dean was also worried. He was worried that something could happen to his son. He was worried about losing him. Dino became a pilot. He trained extensively. He became skilled at flying military aircraft. He was proud of his service. And his father was proud of him, even if Dean didn't always know how to say it. March 21st, 1987. On March 21st, 1987, Dino was flying an F-15 Eagle fighter jet over California. It was a routine training flight. Nothing unusual. Nothing that would suggest that anything was wrong. Dino had flown many times before. He was an experienced pilot. He was confident in his abilities. But something went wrong that day. The exact cause of the accident was never fully determined. Some sources suggest a mechanical failure. Others suggest pilot error, though many experts disputed that. What is certain is that the plane crashed, and Dino didn't survive. When the wreckage was found, Dino was gone. The military confirmed it. Dean Martin's son had been killed in the crash. The performance at the Sands. Dean Martin was performing at the Sands Hotel in Las Vegas on the night of March 21st, 1987. It was a Saturday night. The place was packed. The audience was excited. They were there to see one of their favorite performers. They didn't know that backstage, a tragedy had just occurred. Dean had been told about the accident before the show. He had been given the option to cancel his performance. Management at the Sands understood what had happened. They would have understood if Dean needed to stop and grieve. But Dean made a decision. He decided to go on with the show. Why? Nobody can say for certain. Maybe Dean was in denial and couldn't face the reality yet. Maybe Dean thought that performing would help him cope with the grief. Maybe Dean felt obligated to the audience who had come to see him. Maybe Dean didn't know any other way to process what had happened except to keep moving. Whatever the reason, Dean took the stage that night. The beginning of the show. Dean came out on stage like he always did. He was smiling. He looked fine. The audience had no idea what was happening inside his mind. He performed his songs. He did his comedy bits. He made the audience laugh. He was doing his job as an entertainer. But those who knew Dean well could see that something was different. His performance was mechanically perfect, but it was missing something. It was missing the warmth. It was missing the genuine joy that usually radiated from Dean when he was on stage. It was like watching someone perform while a part of them was somewhere else. Which, of course, he was. Midway through the performance, the stage manager handed Dean the note. The note contained the details about Dino's death. It was official now. It wasn't speculation or hope that something had gone wrong. It was reality. His son was gone. Dean read the note. And for a moment, he was completely frozen. The audience didn't know what was happening. From their perspective, Dean had just read something on a piece of paper. Maybe it was a joke. Maybe it was a request for a song. Maybe it was something funny. But it wasn't funny. It was the worst news a father could receive. The decision. In that moment, Dean had to make a choice. He could leave the stage. He could tell the audience what had happened. He could break down and grieve in front of thousands of people. He could be honest about what he was experiencing. Or he could keep performing. What Dean did next became one of the most remembered moments in entertainment history. He continued with the show. The performance after. But something had changed. Everyone in the audience could feel it now. Dean's voice became quieter. His jokes came slower. His movements on stage became less animated. It was clear that something was profoundly wrong. Then, during one of his songs, Dean's voice cracked. The audience felt it. They felt the emotion. They didn't know what had caused it, but they could sense that something real was happening on that stage. Dean pushed through. He finished the song. He continued performing. But it was different now. It was raw. It was real. It was a man going through the motions while his heart was breaking. The tears. As Dean continued to perform, tears started to stream down his face. The audience was confused. Was this part of the show? Was Dean acting? Or was something real happening? As the tears continued to flow, people in the audience began to realize that this wasn't an act. This was real. This was genuine grief happening in front of them. A woman in the front row stood up. She had tears in her eyes too. She understood, even without knowing the details, that something tragic had happened. Then another person stood. And another. Until most of the audience was standing, recognizing that they were witnessing something profound. Something real, the breaking point. For a man like Dean Martin, someone who had built his entire career on being able to control his emotions, on being able to make people laugh no matter what, this was incredibly difficult. Dean had learned, over decades of performing, how to separate his personal life from his stage life. He had learned how to show up and perform even when things in his life were difficult. But this was different. This wasn't just difficult. This was the death of his son. This was the worst thing that could happen to a father. And Dean couldn't perform through it. He couldn't hide it. The grief was too big. The loss was too overwhelming. He managed to finish the show. He managed to get through the performance. But it was like watching someone carry an impossible weight across a stage. The end of the performance. As the show came to an end, Dean made an announcement. He told the audience that his son had been killed in a military plane accident. He told them that his son had been a pilot. He told them that he had tried to perform through the grief because he didn't know what else to do. The audience was silent. Completely silent. The joy that had been there moments before had been replaced by something else entirely. By understanding. By empathy. By shared human emotion. Many people in the audience were crying. They were crying for Dean. They were crying for his loss. They were crying because they were witnessing a father's grief. Dean left the stage, and the audience remained standing, not applauding, but honoring the moment with respect and silence. The aftermath. In the days and weeks following the show, the story spread. People talked about how Dean had continued performing even after learning that his son was dead. People talked about the tears. People talked about the raw emotion. People talked about the strength it must have taken to go through with the performance. But people also talked about something else, the love between Dean and his son. The love that was so strong that even in the worst moment of his life, Dean was affected by it. The media covered the story extensively. News outlets talked about the tragedy. Entertainment magazines explored Dean's grief. The world watched as one of Hollywood's biggest stars faced the unimaginable loss of a child. The public reaction. What happened was unexpected. Instead of people judging Dean for continuing with the performance, people expressed deep compassion. People understood that Dean hadn't been trying to be brave or tough. People understood that Dean had simply been doing what he knew how to do in an impossible situation. People understood that grief doesn't stop just because you're on stage. Letters poured into Dean from fans all over the world. People shared their own stories of loss. People expressed their sympathy. People told Dean that his performance that night, the real, raw, honest performance, had touched them more deeply than any perfect performance could have. The hidden struggle. What people didn't see was what happened after the show. What people didn't see was Dean Martin alone in his dressing room, completely devastated. What people didn't see was a man struggling to accept that his son was gone. What people didn't see was the grief that would haunt Dean for the rest of his life. Because losing a child is a pain that never goes away. It's a scar that never fully heals. It's a weight that you carry forever. Dean carried that weight for the rest of his life. He lived for another 13 years after Dino's death, but he was never quite the same. The spark that had made him one of the greatest entertainers in the world dimmed. The changed man. Dean Martin continued to perform after that night, but less frequently. He continued to record music, but his heart wasn't always in it the same way. Friends said that Dean was changed. They said he was quieter. They said he was more withdrawn. They said he seemed like a man who was going through the motions of life, rather than truly living. But those who knew Dean also said that he was more compassionate. They said that experiencing the loss of his son had made him more understanding of other people's pain. They said that grief had, in some strange way, made him a more complete human being. The legacy of a son. Dino's death wasn't the end of his story. His memory lived on. People remembered him not just as Dean Martin's son, but as his own person. As a talented entertainer. As a dedicated military pilot. As someone who had tried to forge his own path while honoring his father's legacy. Dino became an inspiration to many people. People who were grieving their own children found comfort in knowing that they weren't alone. People who were struggling with loss found meaning in Dean's example of continuing on even when the pain was overwhelming. The lesson in grief. What happened that night at the Sands Hotel became a teaching moment about grief. It became a moment that showed the world what real grief looks like. It's not something you can always control. It's not something you can always hide. Sometimes grief is bigger than you. Sometimes grief breaks through all the walls you've built. And that's okay, because grief is the price we pay for love. And love is the most important thing we have. The power of grief. The deepest lesson from this story is about the power of grief. We live in a world that often tells us to suppress our emotions. We're told to be strong. We're told to keep moving. We're told to not burden others with our pain. But Dean Martin showed us something different that night. He showed us that sometimes you can't suppress grief. Sometimes the pain is too big. Sometimes you have to let it out. And when you do, something powerful happens. Other people recognize your humanity. Other people connect with you. Other people understand that we're all suffering in some way. Love and loss are connected. Another lesson from this story is that love and loss are connected. You can't love someone deeply without also risking the pain of losing them. You can't open your heart to another person without making yourself vulnerable to grief. Dean Martin loved his son. He loved him deeply. And that love made the loss unbearable. But it was because of that love that he was able to break down on stage and show his true feelings. If Dean hadn't loved Dino so much, he wouldn't have been so devastated. But the love was what made him fully human. The strength and vulnerability. For most of his life, Dean Martin had built an image of being strong, being in control, being able to handle anything with humor and charm. But that night, Dean showed a different kind of strength. The strength to be vulnerable. The strength to show his pain. The strength to let people see him breaking. And in that moment, he was stronger than he'd ever been. Because true strength isn't about never breaking. True strength is about breaking and then continuing on anyway. How we support each other. This story also teaches us about how we support each other in grief. Dean's audience didn't judge him. They didn't think less of him for crying. Instead, they stood with him. They honored his grief. They recognized that what he was experiencing was real and important. That's what we should all try to do for each other. When someone is grieving, we should recognize that their grief is real. We should honor it. We should stand with them, even if we don't know what to say. The mask we wear. Throughout his career, Dean Martin had worn a mask. The mask of the entertainer. The mask of the strong man who could always make people laugh. But that night, the mask came off. And what people saw underneath was a real human being. A father. A man experiencing the worst pain imaginable. This teaches us something important about the masks we all wear. We all have masks. We all have public personas that are different from who we really are. And while masks can be useful, they can also isolate us. They can keep us from being truly known by others. Sometimes we need to take off the mask. Sometimes we need to let people see who we really are. Sometimes we need to be vulnerable. The courage of a father. At its deepest level, this story is about a father's love and a father's grief. Dino was not just Dean Martin's son. Dino was a person in his own right. But in that moment, the connection between father and son was what mattered most. The love was what mattered most. And Dean's willingness to show that love, even in the most public and difficult way, was an act of courage. It was an act of honoring his son's memory. It was an act of recognizing that some things are more important than image or reputation. Living with loss. The final lesson from this story is about living with loss. Grief doesn't go away. It doesn't disappear after a few days or weeks or months. It stays with you. It changes you. It becomes part of who you are. But you can learn to live with it. You can learn to carry it. You can learn to honor the person you've lost by continuing to live, even when that's the hardest thing to do. Dean Martin lived with the loss of his son for 13 years after that night at the Sands Hotel. He continued to perform. He continued to create. He continued to live. But he was different. He was scarred. He was marked by the loss. And that was okay, because loss is a part of being human. Loss is a part of loving deeply. The universal truth. What this story ultimately teaches us is that beneath all our success, all our fame, all our accomplishments, we are still just human beings who love people and fear losing them. Dean Martin was one of the biggest stars in the world. He had everything money could buy. He had fame and success and prestige. But none of that mattered when he lost his son. Because no amount of success can protect us from loss. No amount of money can bring back someone we love. What matters is the love we have for each other. What matters is the people we care about. What matters is recognizing that life is precious and fragile and short. Final call to action. This story broke your heart for a reason. Because it shows us the deepest human emotions. Because it reminds us that even celebrities, even the most successful people, experience the same kind of pain we all experience. If this video touched your heart, if it reminded you of the fragility of life and the importance of the people you love, if it showed you that vulnerability is a form of strength, *** like this video right now and subscribe to discover more stories about real human emotion, real loss, and real love. Hit that notification bell *** so you never miss a story that reminds you what truly matters in life. Not success, not fame, not accomplishments, but the people we love and the time we spend with them. Leave a comment below ***. Have you experienced the loss of someone you love deeply? How did that loss change you? What did it teach you about life and about what really matters? Share your story. Your experience might help someone else who is grieving understand that they're not alone. Or tell us, who do you love so deeply that the thought of losing them is unbearable? Have you told them that today? Have you hugged them? Have you let them know how much they mean to you? Because this story is really about reminding us that we should tell the people we love how much they matter. We should spend time with them. We should not take them for granted. Dean Martin had to learn this lesson in the worst possible way. He had to lose his son to fully understand that love is the most important thing. That family is the most important thing. That time with the people we love is more precious than anything else. Don't wait for tragedy to remind you of this. Don't wait until it's too late. Reach out to the people you love today. Tell them that they matter. Tell them that they're important. Tell them that you love them. Because life is short, and the people we love are the greatest gift we have. Thank you for watching this heartbreaking but beautiful story of a father's love and a father's grief. I'll see you in the next video where we continue exploring the stories of real people, real emotions, and what truly matters in life. Now go like and subscribe. And then go tell someone you love them. ***.